In this lesson, we're still going to talk about how do we solve radical equations whenever there's more than one variable, so the variables are in both sides. Now, we're still going to use the same idea here. We're going to use exponents to eliminate any radical or any kind of square root. But now, this video is going to be a little bit different since the problems, we're not just going to have one square root, but now we have two square roots. Okay, now, according to the main idea, again, we're solving here. We want to get the value of x. Now, according to the main idea here is that you still want to solve. You want to get the x by itself. Those x's are inside the square roots. So what do? You know that there's an imaginary 2 there. Okay? So if there's an imaginary 2 there, you want to eliminate that square root. How do we eliminate? Using exponents. So we have to take the square root to both sides. Now again, I'm able to take the square root to both sides because in one side, the square root, it's already alone. Now that you have the square root alone, then we can take the exponents. So it was already alone, it was already isolated, so I'm able to take the exponent. So now let's see. Now we have x plus 4 equals 3 minus square root of x to the second. Okay, so let's see what that is. 3 minus square root of x to the second. That is equal to 3 minus square root of x times 3 minus square root of x. Okay, so now let's find out what this expression is by doing FOIL. So we FOIL. So 3 times 3, that's 9. 3 times negative square root of 3. You gotta remember that when you multiply a number times the square root, the number goes outside. So we have negative 3 square root of x. Okay, so now let's finish our FOIL. Negative square root of x times 3, that's again negative 3 square root of x. And negative square root of x times negative square root of x. Negative times a negative, that's a positive. Square root of x times square root of x, that's just x. Whenever you multiply the same square root twice, you only put the insides. All right, so let's simplify this now. So we have 9 minus 6 square root of x plus x. All right, so now we have this. So what do we do now? Let's just put it on the right side because 3 minus square root of x to the second, we found it to be this expression. So let's continue our calculations. Now we have 9 minus 6 square root of x plus x. All right, so that's cool. That's awesome. So what do we do now here? Well, you gotta set it equal to 0 again. So let's subtract 4 to both sides here. It will definitely cancel out. So now we have that x is equal to 9 minus 6 square root of x plus x. Again, we want to make our equation equal to 0, so minus x here, minus x here. So now we have 0 equals 9 minus 6 square root of x. They also cancel out here. So this is all we have now. Awesome, good. So now, the problem is actually easier than I thought, but still, let's solve it. Now, how are we going to solve this? We solve by letting the square root to be alone. So now, we need to isolate the square root. So now we need to answer with a 9. Now we gotta take the negative 9 to the other side because you want to leave the square root alone because that's how you solve it. So now we have negative 9 equals negative 6 square root of x. We need to let the square root to be alone. So what do we do now here? We need to divide by negative 6 to both sides because notice that this negative 6 is multiplying the square root of x. And if you want to cancel that out, you got to do the opposite. And the opposite of multiplication is division. So that's why we got to divide here. So now what do we have? We have 9 divided by 6. So what is that? Can we simplify this? So 3 goes into 9 3 times. 3 goes into 6 2 times. So, oops, I'm sorry about that. Square root of x. All right. So now, again, how do we solve or how do we eliminate that square root? Well, we gotta take the exponent again. Okay. It's a little bit messy, but it's long. It's messy, but this is what it is, man. Okay, so we have 3 to the second, or 3 divided by 2 to the second. You gotta remember that your rule of exponents, this 2 distributes. So we're gonna have 3 to the second, which is 9, over 2 to the second, which is 4, equals to x. Alright, so we did all this work. And we know that x is equal to 9 over 4. So here comes the good part. Yes, we have to check now. So let's check. Let's check what happens when x is equal to 9 over 4. Now let me bring down the equation that we're checking. Again, in order for us to check. So after doing all this work, we gotta check. How do we check? This is our guess. We gotta make sure this is true, so we're gonna plug it in. So now we have square root of 9 over 4 plus 4 equals 3 minus the square root of 9 over 4. Okay, that's all I did. This is our guess. We plug it in to see if it's true. And now let's see what happens here. All right, so 4, let's see. 9 over 4 plus 4. In order for us to add them up, they need to have the same denominator. So I know that 4, I can write it as 4, 8, so that's 16. 16 divided by 4, that is 4. So 4, I can rewrite as 16 over 4. So now I have that 9 over 4 plus 16 over 4 is equal to 3 minus the square root of 9 over 4. Okay, so now let's check. Now they have the same denominator. Now I can add. So we have 9 plus 16, that's 19, that's 25. So we have 25, it's an ugly 5. So we got 25 over 4 square root of x equals to 3 minus square root of 9 over 4. Okay, so now when you're taking the square root of a fraction, that's the same. So the square root of 25 over 4, that is the same as the square root of 25. Okay, what's wrong with those 5s? There it is. So the square root of 25 divided by the square root of 4, which is just 5 divided by 2. So to take the square root of a fraction, that's the same as to take the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. So now we have 25, the square root of 25 is 5, the square root of 4 is 2, equals to 3 minus, again, the square root of a fraction is the same as the square root on top divided by the square root of the bottom. So the square root of 9, that's 3. The square root of 4, that's 2. Okay, so if you don't like fractions, what we can do here is just get our calculator. Let's make our life easier. 5 divided by 2. Okay, let's see if this whole mess is equal to 5 divided by 2. Okay, I guess we're done. 3 minus 3 divided by 2. Again, you gotta press mathematics and fraction. So we know that the right side is equal to 3 halves. So here we have that 5 over 2 is equal to 3 halves. Now, we did all this and we found out that they're not equal. So what does that mean? So after doing all this work, it means that, yep, There's no solution. Because how do I know there's there's no solution? Well, it's because we did all this work. We did all this. We found that our only solution was 9 over 4. So when we plugged it in here, we saw that this was not true. The left is not equal to the right. That was our only solution. So that means that there's no solution. And doesn't that feel great? Okay. Let's try another example. Now here, again, the idea here is to, whenever you have more than one square root, try to put the square roots on each side. So the first thing I want to do here is to just, let's move that square root of x to the other side. Okay. So now we have the square root of x plus 2 is equals to 6 minus the square root of x. And now we have the same setup as the previous problem. So let's see. I need to eliminate that square root. How do I do that? By taking the square. Okay, so let's take the square to both sides. Now that will cancel out. So now we have x plus 12 is equal to the right side. What is that? Well, let's find out. 6 minus the square root of x square. That is the same as 6 minus the square root of x times 6 minus the square root of x. Okay, so we have this. Let's figure out what that is. We gotta do FOIL. So let's see. 6 times 6. Let me make some space here because I know it's gonna be a little bit lengthy. So 6 times 6, that's 36. 6 times negative square root of 6, that's negative 6 square root of x. Okay, so we're done with that 6. So negative square root of x times 6, that's another 6 square root of x. And negative square root of x times negative square root of x, negative times a negative, that's a positive. Square root of x times square root of x, just x. So we have all this. So now we have 36 minus 12x, 12 square root of x plus x. Okay, so this is just side work to figure out what the right side is about. So the right side is equal to this, 36 minus 12 square root of x plus x. So let's substitute it back here. So 36 minus 12 square root of x plus x. All right. So what do you notice here? If I substitute x, the x's are going to cancel out eventually. So they cancel out. Awesome. So what do we have now? 12 equals 36 minus 12 square root of x. Now let's solve for that square root of x. How do we solve for that square root of x? You gotta leave it alone. Now if you want to leave it alone, we gotta substitute that 36 first. We gotta leave the square root of them first. So now let's see. 12 minus 36 is equal to negative. So we have that negative 24 is equal to negative 12 square root of x. Okay. So how do we do this? You gotta leave the square root alone. So the negative 12 is multiplying, so we gotta divide. So now we have negative 24 divided by negative 12. Well, that is equal to, what is that, 2? What am I doing? So 2 equals the square root of x. So this is pretty much straightforward. You want to eliminate that square root again, so we gotta take the square. Okay. Eliminate now. Now we have that x is equal to 2 to the second, which is 4. All right. So we did our work. We see that x is equal to 4. So what do we have to do now? Yep, we gotta check. Don't forget to check. So let's check here. Let's check when x is equal to 4. Let me bring our equation down here. So we're going to check now. Let's see if x equals to 4 is actually a solution. So what do we do now? We plug it in. So let's see. What do we have now? We have the square root of 4 plus 12 plus the square root of 4 equals 6. Well, let's see if this statement is true. So 12 plus 4, that is 16. So now we have the square root of 16 plus the square root of 4. Is that equal 6? Well, I know the square root of 16, that is equal to 4. The square root of 4, that is equal to 2, equals 6. Now 4 times 2, we have that 6 is equal to 6. Ooh, so that checks. So that means that x equals to 4. It is actually a solution for ours. So let's write down our conclusion here. Oops, that's in Spanish. Conclusion. All right, so we have our conclusion. What do we know about conclusion? Is that we have a solution when x is equal to 4. Okay. Well, I feel like the first example was a little bit not that straightforward because we were dealing with fractions, but know that in mathematics, we are going to deal with fractions. They're there. So we got to get comfortable with them, but the process is the same. You got to leave the square roots alone. One square root on the left side, one square root on the right side. You take the second exponent, you deal with the simplification, and don't forget to check. There is no entrance ticket today, so this is just an extra video because I wanted to explain some extra stuff.